Erythrea is an ancient name, associated in the past with its Greek form Erythræa, rho upsilon theta rho alpha iota alpha, and its derived Latin form Erythræa. This name relates to that of the Red Sea, then called the Erythræan Sea, from the Greek for red, rho upsilon theta rho omicron sigma erythros. The Italians created the colony of Erythrea in the 19th century around Asmara and named it with its current name. After World War II, Eritrea was annexed to Ethiopia. In 1991, the Erythræan People's Liberation Front defeated the Ethiopian government. Eritrea officially celebrated its first anniversary of independence on May 24, 1992. Prehistory. At Boulia in Eritrea, one of the oldest hominids representing a possible link between Homo erectus and an archaic Homo sapiens was found by Italian scientists, dated to over 1 million year old. It is the oldest skeletal find of its kind and provides a link between hominids and the earliest anatomically modern humans. It is believed that the section of the Danakil Depression in Eritrea was also a major player in terms of human evolution, and may contain other traces of evolution from Homo erectus hominids to anatomically modern humans. During the last interglacial period, the Red Sea coast of Eritrea was occupied by early anatomically modern humans. It is believed that the area was on the route out of Africa that some scholars suggest was used by early humans to colonize the rest of the Old World. In 1999, the Erythræan Research Project team composed of Erythræan, Canadian, American, Dutch and French scientists discovered a Paleolithic site with stone and obsidian tools dated to over 125,000 years old near the Bay of Zulu south of Massawa, along the Red Sea littoral. The tools are believed to have been used by early humans to harvest marine resources like clams and oysters. According to linguists, the first Afro-Asiatic-speaking populations arrived in the region during the ensuing Neolithic era from the families proposed Heimat in the Nile, the Valley, or the Near East. Other scholars propose that the Afro-Asiatic family developed in situ in the Horn, with its speakers subsequently dispersing from their antiquity, put together with Djibouti, Ethiopia, northern Somalia, and the Red Sea coast of Sudan. Erythrea is considered the most likely location of the land known to the ancient Egyptians as Punt, whose first mention dates to the 25th century BC. The ancient Puntites were a nation of people that had close relations with pharaonic Egypt during the times of Pharaoh Sahuri and Queen Hatshepsut. In 2010, a genetic study was conducted on the mummified remains of baboons that were brought back as gifts from Punt by the ancient Egyptians, led by a research team from the Egyptian Museum and the University of California. The scientists used oxygen isotope analysis to examine hairs from two baboon mummies that had been preserved in the British Museum. One of the baboons had distorted isotopic data, so the other's oxygen isotope values were compared to those of present-day baboon specimens from regions of interest. The researchers found that the mummies most closely matched modern baboon specimens in Eritrea and Ethiopia, which they suggested implied that Punt was likely a narrow region that included eastern Ethiopia, Somalia, and all of Eritrea. Honor culture or excavations at Sembel found evidence of an ancient pre-Aksumite civilization in Greater Asmara. This honor urban culture is believed to have been among the earliest pastoral and agricultural communities in the Horn region. Artifacts at the site have been dated to between 800 BC and 400 BC. contemporaneous with other pre-Aksumite settlements in the Erythræan and Ethiopian highlands during the mid-1st millennium BC. Additionally, the Honor culture may have had connections with the ancient land of Punt. In a tomb in Thebes dated to the reign of Pharaoh Amenophes II, long-necked pots similar to those made by the Honor people are depicted as part of the cargo in a ship from Punt. Gash group excavations in and near Agordat in central Erythrea yielded the remains of an ancient pre-Aksumite civilization known as the Gash group. Ceramics were discovered that were related to those of the Sea group pastoral culture, which inhabited the Nile Valley between 2500–1500 BC. Sherds akin to those of the Kerma culture, another community that flourished in the Nile Valley around the same period, were also found at other local archaeological sites in the Barka Valley belonging to the Gash group. According to Peter Behrens and Marianne Bethaus-Gerst, linguistic evidence indicates that the Sea group and Kerma peoples spoke Afro-Asiatic languages of the Berber and Cushitic branches, respectively. Kingdom of D. Mount was a kingdom that encompassed most of Erythrea and the northern fringes of Ethiopia. It existed during the 8th and 7th centuries BC. Given the presence of a massive temple complex, its capital was most likely Yeha-Kahito, often identified as the town Kolo in the periplus of the Erythræan Sea, as well as Matara were important ancient D-Mount kingdom cities in southern Erythrea. The realm developed irrigation schemes, used plows, grew millet, and made iron tools and weapons. After the fall of D-Mount in the 5th century BC, the plateau came to be dominated by smaller successor kingdoms until the rise of one of these polities during the 1st century, the Kingdom of Aksum, which was able to reunite the area. Kingdom of Aksum. The Kingdom of Aksum was a trading empire centered in Erythrea and northern Ethiopia. It existed from approximately 10940 AD, growing from the Proto-Aksumite Iron Age period c. 4th century BC to achieve prominence by the 1st century AD. The Aksumites established bases on the northern highlands of the Ethiopian plateau and from there expanded southward. The Persian religious figure Mani listed Aksum with Rome, Persia, and China as one of the 4 great powers of his time. The origins of the Aksumite kingdom are unclear, although experts have offered the speculations about it. Even whom should be considered the earliest known king is contested, although Carlo Conti Rossini proposed that Zoscales of Aksum, mentioned in the periplus of the Erythræan Sea, should be identified with one Zahaklai mentioned in the Ethiopian king lists. W.B. Huntingford argued that Zoscales was only a sub-king whose authority was limited to Adulis, and that Conti Rossini's identification cannot be substantiated. According to the medieval Liber Aksumi, Aksum's first capital, Mizaba, was built by Eteopes, son of Cush. Munro cites the Muslim historian Abu Ja'far al-Khwarizmi as stating that the capital of the Kingdom of Habash was Jama. The capital was later moved to Aksum in northern Ethiopia. The kingdom used the name Ethiopia as early as the 4th century. The Aksumites erected a number of large stelae, which served a religious purpose in pre-Christian times. One of these granite columns is the largest such structure in the world, standing at 90 feet. Under Ezana, Aksum later adopted Christianity. In 615, during the lifetime of Muhammad, the Aksumite king Sahama provided asylum to early Muslims from Mecca fleeing persecution. This journey is known in Islamic history as the First Hijra. The area is also the alleged resting place of the Ark of the Covenant and the purported home of the Queen of Sheba. The kingdom, as mentioned in the periplus of the Erythræan Sea, is an important marketplace for ivory, which was exported throughout the ancient world. Aksum was at the time ruled by Zoskales, who also governed the port of Adulis. The Aksumite rulers facilitated trade by minting their own Aksumite currency. The state also established its hegemony over the declining Kingdom of Kush and regularly entered the politics of the kingdoms on the Arabian Peninsula, eventually extending its rule over the region with the conquest of the Himyarite kingdom. Inscriptions have been found in southern Arabia celebrating victories over one Gdrt, described as Nagashi of Habashat and of Aksum. Quote, other dated inscriptions are used to determine a florite for Gdrt around the beginning of the 3rd century. A bronze scepter wand has been discovered at Atsbi Dera with an inscription mentioning Gdr of Aksum. Coins showing the royal portrait began to be minted under King Injubis toward the end of the 3rd century. Additionally, expeditions by Ezana into the Kingdom of Kush at Meroe in Sudan may have brought about the latter polity's demise, though there is evidence that the kingdom was experiencing a period of decline beforehand. As a result of Ezana's expansions, Aksum bordered the Roman province of Egypt. The degree of Aksum's control over Yemen is uncertain, though there is little evidence supporting Aksumite control of the region at the time. His title, which includes King of Saba and Salin, Himyar and Du-Raden, along with gold Aksumite coins with the inscriptions King of the Habshat or Habashid, indicate that Aksum might have retained some legal or actual footing in the area. Details of the Aksumite kingdom, never abundant, become even more scarce after this point. The last king known to mint coins is Amr, whose coinage refers to the Persian conquest of Jerusalem in 614. Stuart Munro Hay believes that Aksum had been abandoned as the capital by Sahamas' reign. However, Kobashchanov suggests that Ethiopians retained hegemony over the Arabian ports until at least as late as 702. Medri Bari and Usa Sultanate. After the decline of Aksum, the highlands were under the domain of Bar Nagash ruled by the Bar Negus. The area was then known as Marakal Bar. It was later renamed under Emperor Zara Yaqub as the domain of the Bar Nagash, the Medri Bari, with its capital at Dibawa. The state's main provinces were Hamassi and Seri and Akila Gursai. The Ottoman Empire made multiple advances further inland, conquering Medri Bari in the 16th century. The Ottoman state maintained only tenuous control over a small part of the territory over the following centuries until it was reconquered under the Muhammad Ali dynasty in the 19th century. In southern Erythrea, the Ossa Sultanate succeeded the earlier Imamate of Osso. The latter polity had come into existence in 1577, when Muhammad Jassa moved his capital from Hara to Ossa with the split of the Adil Sultanate into Ossa and the Sultanate of Hara. At some point after 1672, Ossa declined in conjunction with Imam Umar din bin Adam's recorded ascension to the throne. In 1734, the Afar leader Kedafu, head of the Mulda Ito clan, seized power and established the Mulda Ito dynasty. This marked the start of a new and more sophisticated polity that would last into the colonial period. Italian Erythrea establishment. The boundaries of the present-day Erythrea nation-state were established during the scramble for Africa. In 1869 or 70, the then-ruling Sultan of Rahita sold lands surrounding the Bay of Assab to the Rubatino Shipping Company. The area served as a coaling station along the shipping lanes introduced by the recently completed Suez Canal. It had long been part of the Ottoman Habesh centered in Egypt. The first Italian settlers arrived in 1880. Later, as the Egyptians retreated out of Sudan during the Mahdist Rebellion, the British brokered an agreement whereby the Egyptians could retreat through Ethiopia, and in exchange they would allow the emperor to occupy those lowland districts that he had disputed with the Turks and Egyptians. Emperor Johannes IV believed this included Massawa, but instead, the port was handed by the Egyptians and the British to the Italians, who united it with the already colonized port of Aseb to form a coastal Italian possession. The Italians took advantage of disorder in northern Ethiopia following the death of Emperor Johannes IV in 1889 to occupy the highlands and established the new colony, henceforth known as Erythræa, and received recognition from Menelik II, Ethiopia's new emperor. The Italian possession of maritime areas previously claimed by Abyssinia, Ethiopia, was formalized in 1889 with the signing of the Treaty of Wuchale, with Emperor Menelik II of Ethiopia after the defeat of Italy by Ethiopia at the Battle of Adua, where Italy launched an effort to expand its possessions from Erythræa into the more fertile Abyssinian hinterland. Menelik would later renounce the Wuchale Treaty as he had been tricked by the translators to agree to making the whole of Ethiopia into an Italian protectorate. However, he was forced by circumstance to live by the tenets of Italian sovereignty over Erythræa. In the vacuum that followed the 1889 death of Emperor Johannes II, Gen. Oreste Baratieri occupied the highlands along the Erythræan coast, and Italy proclaimed the establishment of the new colony of Italian Erythræa, a colony of the Kingdom of Italy. In the Treaty of Wuchale signed the same year, King Menelik of Shawa of southern Ethiopian Kingdom recognized the Italian occupation of his rivals' lands of Bogos, Hamasi and Aglgusai, and Seri in exchange for guarantees of financial assistance and continuing access to European arms and ammunition. His subsequent victory over his rival kings and enthronement as Emperor Menelik II made the treaty formally binding upon the entire territory. In 1888, the Italian administration launched its first development projects in the new colony. The Erythræan Railway was completed to Sati in 1888, and reached Asmara in the highlands in 1911. The Asmara-Massawa cableway was the longest line in the world during its time, but was later dismantled by the British in World War II. Besides major infrastructural projects, the colonial authorities invested significantly in the agricultural sector. It also oversaw the provision of urban amenities in Asmara and Massawa and employed many Erythræans in public service, particularly in the police and public works departments. Thousands of Erythræans were concurrently enlisted in the army, serving during the Italo-Turkish War in Libya as well as the First and Second Italo-Abyssinian Wars. Additionally, the Italian Erythræa administration opened a number of new factories which produced buttons, cooking oil, pasta, construction materials, packing meat, tobacco, hide and other household commodities. In 1939, there were around 2,198 factories and most of the employees were Erythræan citizens. The establishment of industries also made an increase in the number of both Italians and Erythræans residing in the cities. The number of Italians residing in the territory increased from 4,600 to 75,000 in 5 years, and with the involvement of Erythræans in the industries, trade and fruit plantation was expanded across the nation, while some of the plantations were owned by Erythræans. In 1922, Benito Mussolini's rise to power in Italy brought profound changes to the colonial government in Italian Erythræa. After Il Duce declared the birth of the Italian Empire in May 1936, Italian Erythræa and Italian Somaliland were merged with the just conquered Ethiopia in the new Italian East Africa Administrative Territory. This fascist period period was characterized by imperial expansion in the name of a new Roman Empire. Erythrea was chosen by the Italian government to be the industrial center of Italian East Africa. The Italians brought to Erythrea a huge development of Catholicism. By 1940, nearly one-third of the territory's population was Catholic, mainly in Asmara, where many churches were built. Asmara development. Italian Asmara was populated by a large Italian community, and the city acquired an Italian architectural look. One of the first building was the Asmara President's Office. This former Italian government's palace was built in 1897 by Ferdinando Martini, the first Italian governor of Erythrea. The Italian government wanted to create in Asmara an impressive building, from where the Italian governors could show the dedication of the Kingdom of Italy to the Colonia Primogenitura, as was called Erythrea. Today Asmara is worldwide known for its early 20th century Italian buildings, including the Art Deco Cinema Impero, Cubist Africa Pension, eclectic Orthodox Cathedral and former Opera House, the futurist Fiat Taliero building, neo-Romanesque Roman Catholic Cathedral, and the neoclassical Governor's Palace. The city is littered with Italian colonial villas and mansions. Most of central Asmara was built between 1935 and 1941, so effectively the Italians managed to build almost an entire city in just 6 years. The city of Italian Asmara had a population of 98,000, of which 53,000 were Italians according to the Italian census of 1939. This fact made Asmara the main Italian town of the Italian Empire in Africa. In all Erythrea, the Italian Erythreans were 75,000 in that year. Many industrial investments were done by the Italians in the area of Asmara and Massawa, but the beginning of World War II stopped the blossoming industrialization of Erythrea. When the British Army conquered Erythrea from the Italians in spring 1941, most of the infrastructure and the industrial areas were extremely damaged. The following Italian guerrilla war was supported by many Erythrean colonial troops until the Italian armistice in September 1943. Erythrea was placed under British military administration after the Italian surrender in World War II. The Italian Erythreans strongly rejected the Ethiopian annexation of Erythrea after the war. The party of Shara Italy of Dr. Vincenzo Di Meglio was established in Asmara in July 1947, and majority of the members were former Italian soldiers and many Erythrean askari. This party, ruled by Dr. Di Meglio, obtained in 1947 the dismissal of a proposal to divide Erythrea between Sudan and Ethiopia. The main objective of this Italo-Erythrean party was Erythrea freedom, but they had a precondition that stated that before independence the country should be governed by Italy for at least 15 years.